Wildcard success. Pun very much intended.
Captain's Pick, the FPL Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 13th episode of Captain's Pick, the FPL Podcast. I'm your host, Geoff Willis, and each week I'll be talking fantasy Premier League football. You can find the show on a whole host of podcast services, just search Captain's Pick, and we also feature on the YouTube channel Vilsey Podcasts, so please remember to subscribe, like and share. On today's show, I'll be reviewing Game Week 10 and my team's performance, evaluating my wildcard selections, looking at a 50-50 choice for my captain's pick, talking transfers, and I'll finish off by previewing Game Week 11 fixtures. Before we start, I just wanted to echo a lot of the messages and thoughts from other FPL managers and podcasts in sending prayers and thoughts to everyone involved in the horrific crash at Leicester last weekend. Very much puts in context football and the FPL game. So stay strong, stay together, and we'll all be rooting for Leicester, I'm sure, this weekend to put in a brave performance. Also, thoughts and prayers go out to Glenn Hoddle and his family, recovering in hospital from a heart attack last weekend. Obviously a huge figure in Chelsea's history. Always been a big fan of Glenn Hoddle, so sending him the best. Okay, so let's have a little review of Game Week 10. I'll, as usual, go through the fixtures where my players were playing in, and we'll see how I got on. So, beginning with the Brighton Wolves game, Brighton winning that 1-0. I had Doherty in that match, bringing me 2 points. He had a whole host of chances, unbelievably didn't score. Could have had a big points haul in that match. I think Brighton were a little lucky to get that clean sheet. So still happy with him in my team, and certainly be looking at, if he keeps that up, definitely be looking at points coming from him in the next 4 or 5 game weeks for sure. Glenn Murray scoring in that match is on my watch list as a possible replacement for Mitrovic, but just having a look at him at the moment, he's been in good goal scoring form, but not sure he can keep it up at the rate he is playing for Brighton. So then we had Fulham's 3-0 home loss to Bournemouth. I had Mitrovic playing in this game. Looked non-existent and got a yellow card. It's only 1 point from him. So in the 2 games I've had him in, he scored 6 points. So not too bad, but no goals in there. He needs to score in the next game. Well, to be honest, regardless whether he scores or not, he'll be getting cut probably for Arnautovic next week. So just hoping that he can get a goal or maybe a couple of goals. Then Liverpool match home to Cardiff 4-1 was always going to be a bit of a thrashing. I had Salah in this game as captain. He got me a huge 30 points. So great to have him repay the faith that I've kept in him all season. In the end, Alexander-Arnold played for me. Only got the 2 points to a slightly fortuitous Cardiff goal. So that was disappointing. And Robson was obviously dropped. Or rested, I should say. If you listened to last week's pod, I did think that Alexander-Arnold would play, so I did get that, but I didn't think that Moreno would come in for Robertson. But I was quite happy to have the both, and certainly looking towards the rest of the season, I'll be having Robertson in play for me for most of the matches, and Alexander-Arnold will only be in for another couple of games, I think. So Robertson dropped to my bench with 0 points. I had Josh Murphy playing in that game. He was always going to stay on my bench. He got 2 points. So that's fine. Happy to have him getting those small points from the bench, but he did stay on the bench. Next up, we've got Southampton at home to Newcastle 0-0. Had no players playing in this. Had Lascelles on my watch list. Did consider bringing him in during my wildcard. He did well, got a clean sheet and all 3 bonus points. So a slight regret not bringing him in there. But not too disappointed. Watford at home to Huddersfield. This was really successful for me. I brought in Foster. He got me a clean sheet, save points and bonus points. 9 points from that game, that 3-0 win against Huddersfield. If you did listen to the podcast last week, I did talk about Delafeu possibly coming in. Didn't bring him in, but because obviously he got one of the goals. But I was happy with Foster's points. And Isaac Success. What a success he was for me. Brought him in for 4.5 million, and he came off my bench to get 6 points in that game. So very happy to see that pay off. Then the Leicester West Ham game, obviously overshadowed by the tragic circumstances, what happened after the game. Had Maddison in this game. Didn't bring any returns, only the 2 points. So he's only brought me in 3 2-pointers in the 3 games I've had him. But I'm sure he'll pick up some form in the next 3 or 4 game weeks. And I think he could potentially have a big game week next week, or this week coming against Cardiff. Noah Arnautovic in that game. Was thinking of bringing him in for Mitrovic. He's a little bit of an injury doubt, but I like West Ham's fixtures, so keeping an eye on him this weekend for sure. Sunday's game, Chelsea 4-0 win away at Burnley. Brilliant for Alonso. Brought me in the attacking returns I've been waiting for the last 4 games, or 4 or 5 games. Got me a clean sheet and assist. So he brought me in 11 points, which was excellent to see. And of course, I brought in Hazard during my wildcard last week, and he wasn't in the squad. 0 points, dropped to my bench. That's okay. I mean, I did take a bit of a risk. We knew he had a slight injury, but he certainly was brought in for the next 4, 5, 6 game week. So yeah, I could possibly have took a punt and brought in Mane just for that Cardiff game, and he matched Salah. If I'd had the 2 of them and captain, that would have been 45 points. So might have lost out on a few points there, but I would have been looking at transferring Mane back out this game week to bring Hazard in. So that might have been the move, but a lot of those 50-50 calls have been going against me this season, so kind of wanted to play it a little bit safe. Had a good game week, so that was okay. So in the end, on my bench, I had Robson 0 points, Hazard 0 points, and Murphy 2 points. Not sure if there'll be many game weeks where I'll have Robertson and Hazard with 0 points on my bench. That's just one of those game weeks. Palace 2-2 with Arsenal. Obviously, no Palace players anymore. No Wan-Bissaka, no Zaha. Zaha got an assist by going down for a penalty, so he still hasn't returned any goals. So that's definitely cemented in my mind that was a correct decision to move on from him. Arsenal, again, attacking well. Still haven't got any of their players. Just don't know who's going to start, who's going to bring in the attacking returns. Too many questions, and certainly not good enough at the back. Then rounding off Sunday, we had Man United at home to Everton. 2-1 victory there. Similar problems with Man United as with Arsenal, just not really sure who's the consistent point scorer in that team. I obviously took out Richarlison. He got an assist by getting fouled for the penalty, Sigurdsson converting. So I'm not too disappointed with that. No goal, no sort of proper assist, I would say. So I wasn't too disappointed. Would have been nice if Hazard had played. I'm sure if Hazard had played, he would have definitely outscored Richarlison in that match. So in theory, the theory was correct. But in this example, in this case, Richarlison did get those few extra points, but I wasn't too disappointed going forward. Then the Monday night game, obviously took out Kane, definitely the correct decision, as him and Spurs were at home to Man City, 1-0 loss. Aguero 2 points, doesn't return too much in away games, but he's definitely my home captain when he is in home games. And then Mendy, who I brought in my wildcard, got me the clean sheet, 6 points, so very happy with him. Certainly with the home games they've got coming up. Definitely looking at clean sheets and attacking points from him in the games coming up. So all in all, pretty decent wildcard week. 73 points in the end. And obviously that was with Robertson and Hazard not playing. So could have been a huge game week for my wildcard. But definitely not too disappointing, seeing there were a lot of scores. There was a lot of low scores, and then even medium scores this week still saw red arrows. So definitely happy with how my team's set up and the squad going forward from that wild card. Got quite a nice bit of squad value built up as well. So I say 73 points final in game week 10. The average was 58, so that was good to get above that average. And that left me on overall points 595. And in the overall rank, I had a big green arrow, went up again by about another 90,000. So it's nearly 200,000 in the last 2 game weeks, up to 276k now. So definitely working back towards that 100k, inside the 100k, that's where I want to be. And plenty of green arrows in all my mini leagues. In my 2 kind of friends and family league, I'm second place in both of those now, and only within 10 points away from top position in both those leagues. So all in all, a pretty successful wild card. In terms of evaluating that wild card and the decisions I made, happy I brought in Foster. Of course, when you look at the Everton match, Pickford did save a penalty, so he did get 11 points. So he did outscore Foster by 2 points, but after him saving the penalty the week before, the chance of him saving 2 penalties 2 game weeks in a row were pretty small, I would say. I didn't think they'd didn't think they would get a clean sheet, and they didn't. So I'm not too disappointed with that. I think those were sort of lucky. It was a good save, but lucky points to get in that game. From a goalkeeping point of view. So not disappointed at all with bringing in Foster. Bringing in Mendy, brilliant, 6 points. Happy with that. And then it was really about improving my bench as well. So I had KL come off my bench, 2 points. He's playing every game, so that was fine. Murphy I brought in, certainly he'll be playing in the next game. Cardiff got a home match. And I just think with Robertson and Hazard, it's disappointing they didn't play, but I still think they were the right picks. Yes, I could have potentially brought in the likes of Mane or Delafeu or Barkley, but they would have been sort of 1 or 2 week punts. Definitely looking at playing Robertson and Hazard, set and forget, potentially for the rest of the season. So can't be too disappointed. Plus I got some extra value coming in from Mendy and Robertson, who went up double both in price. So yeah, potentially missed out on a few points there, the Mane and potentially bringing in Barkley. Those 2 instead of the Hazard move. Yeah, could have brought those in for maybe 1 game week. But that's FPL, and I'm sure Hazard and Robinson will repay the faith in kind, certainly in the upcoming fixtures for sure. So looking at my squad selection, captain's pick and transfers for game week 11, which the deadline is tomorrow, Saturday, 3rd of November, 11:30 a.m. I'll remind you again at the end of the pod. So in terms of captain's pick, I think the two outstanding candidates would be Aguero at home to Southampton and Hazard at home to Crystal Palace. The caveats to both, I suppose, would be Aguero seems to be playing these 60, 70-minute games. He can definitely do the damage within those allocated minutes, and he does fantastically well at home. But it's obviously those reduced minutes. He didn't play midweek, and I'm not sure there'll be a massive rush for him to play in the Champions League. They've got a home fixture, so I think Jesus could play in that. So he could get more than 70 minutes in this game. The other candidate would be Hazard at home to Crystal Palace. Palace haven't looked great at all. Hazard has been injured and obviously missed out last week. I think he's fit. The yellow flag has gone from him now for this game week, so I expect him to play. I expect him to do well. It's a toss-up. I think both players are owned by nearly 50% of managers. I'm just happy I've got the both of them. I hope they both do well. And so, in terms of captaincy, if they both do well, then there won't be too much of a points difference, whoever you captain. At the moment, I've got the armband on Aguero. He hasn't failed me at home so far as a captain's pick this season. He could get a couple of reduced minutes, Hazard, if he has been injured. He may only play 60, 70 minutes. So it could be the same problem he has with Aguero. Tough call, but I think I'll be going Aguero with a captain's pick. In terms of transfers, I'm looking at rolling over my transfer this week. And so for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 game weeks, I'm always looking at having 2 transfers, using one of them and rolling the next one, just to give me more options. Haven't managed to do that so far this season, but the week after a wildcard, I'm pretty happy with how my team and squad looks, so it's probably a perfect time to roll a transfer. I think I mentioned on the pod last week of potentially bringing in Lascelles for Alexander-Arnold. It's a possibility. Newcastle at home to Watford. Watford have been in good goal scoring form recently, so I'm not sure a clean sheet is on the cards there. I could do that, but the way my squad and team set up at the moment, I don't really want to drop anyone for Lascelles potentially. So I'm not too sure going forward. I need to make that transfer. I'm not sure it's going to make too much difference. And really, he was the only one I was considering from a transfer point of view. Potentially Arnautovic for Mitrovic. But with Mitrovic away at Huddersfield, I fancy him to do well there. Just as good as Mitrovic, who's at home to Burnley. So I think, again, I'd maybe be wasting a transfer. I think there's moves I need to do in the next few weeks where those 2 transfers in hand are definitely going to come in handy for me, I think. So, looking at my squad, I've got Foster in goal. He's Newcastle. He's playing in the match Newcastle away, as I mentioned. Newcastle have been dreadful attacking wise, so I fancy a clean sheet in this game. They are away from home, so there's always that home potential there. But I'm quite pleased with him going into that match. Then I've got Robertson, who is in the match Liverpool away to Arsenal, which is the late afternoon match on Saturday. There's potential of a clean sheet here. Arsenal have been great going forward. Liverpool have been great in defence. I would say there's more of a chance of maybe attacking return for Robertson. Arsenal have looked very weak at the back. And I think it's in this match whoever wins in the wing backs battle, easy for me to say. I think will do well in that. So I think if he's playing against whoever it is, Bellerin, Monreal, whoever they're going to play in those wing-back roles or full-back roles, I think Xhaka filled in last week, didn't look convincing. So I quite fancy Robertson to get some kind of points in that match. It's going to be tricky, but I fancy him to do well. I won't be doubling up on the Liverpool defence. So I've still got Alexander-Arnold. He's currently on my bench because I don't think he'll start. I think he'll start in the Champions League game, and then I think he'll start against Fulham. Similar to how they rotated last week, I think it'll be Lovren and Gomez who play in this game. Then Lovren will be dropped for the Champions League game. Gomez will play with TAA. And then Gomez will be dropped for the Fulham game and TAA will play with Lovren. That's how it worked last week. I think it might happen again. Don't think Moreno will come in for Robertson, though. Again, it could happen. But again, because I got that double up, I'm covering the moves. But for this week, TAA will be sat on my bench. I don't want to risk starting him in my team, him not starting then come on for like a 2-minute cameo. Just don't think it's worth it. Next in defence, Alonso, Crystal Palace at home. Looks a great fixture for him. Looking at getting great points from him. Clean sheet potential. Palace have been woeful up front. They have scored their goals away from home, but they've been few and far between. I think Zaha's a doubt as well. So definitely looking at clean sheet and attacking points potential from Alonso. Likewise, Mendy, who City have got Southampton at home. Southampton woeful. Up front, they've coming off 2 clean sheets, but against a couple of not great sides. So I expect and hope Mendy to play and start in that game. He didn't play in the Carabao Cup midweek, so I fancy him to go big. Points haul could be clean sheet, attacking points and bonus points in that match for him. Then rounding off my defence, Doherty for Wolves, who got a tricky fixture, it's no doubt. Spurs at Wolves in the evening game on Saturday night. He looks so attacking against Brighton now. Obviously, he's not going to have much of the ball and it's going to be closed down probably a lot more by the Spurs defence in that game. But Spurs haven't looked great going forward either. I think they'll potentially have Eriksen and Ali back, so they may be a bit more of an attacking threat. So I wouldn't expect a clean sheet in that match, but I think there's an outside chance of clean sheet there for Doherty. But I would say his attacking possibilities for Doherty there for sure. So if it's 2 points, that's fine, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does get me more than the 2 appearance points. Moving into midfield, I currently have Murphy starting in my team. So he's got Leicester at home. It's going to be a very tricky, awkward game, this game. Cardiff at home to Leicester. I've obviously got Maddison playing in this, who I'm starting as well. This could potentially be a 0-0 draw, or this could be 3-3, 4-4. I think passions are going to be running high, which could work as a positive and a negative for both teams. But I kind of have got the gut feeling where I think Maddison and Murphy could both bring me attacking returns in this match. We'll just see. It's going to be one of those. It's very hard to call, very hard to judge how the Leicester players are going to react. And we'll just see. We'll just see what happens in that game. But I'm quite happy with having a player from each side in that match. I've got Salah starting, obviously. Fancy him to get points again this game week. I won't be captaining him, because I think it is a trickier fixture than what Man City and Chelsea have got in their home games. But Arsenal have been woeful at the back. I fancy him and Mane to do well. So, again, I think if you have both of them or one of them, you can probably cover the other. But I definitely fancy Salah in that match to do well. And then rounding off my midfield, I've got Hazard, again in that home game to Crystal Palace. think he'll start. Whether he'll play the full hour, I'm not sure, but I think he'll do well. And I think he could really put Palace to the sword in that match. He's currently my vice-captain. Pretty sure, though, I will be captaining my first man up front, Aguero, at home to Southampton. Wouldn't be surprised if a hat-trick in this game whatsoever. Kind of reminds me of game week 2 when he was at home to Huddersfield when he got that hat-trick and I captained him then. 6-1 that game was. Wouldn't be totally surprised if it was a similar type of result, if I'm honest. Then, rounding off my first 11, Mitrovic, last chance saloon for him in my team. Pretty sure, unless he is out for longer, Arnautovic, he will be coming in for Mitrovic next game week. So hopefully he can sign off with a couple of goals against Huddersfield away, who haven't looked great, nor Fulham to be fair, but almost this. I feel like this is a 6-pointer, so I would have thought Mitrovic and Fulham would definitely up for be trying to get some points in this game. So that's my starting 11, 4-4-2, and on the bench, first sub, I actually have Success, who did brilliant, and I forgot to mention, actually, I can't believe I didn't mention him in my wildcard evaluation, because he was brilliant. He came off my bench to get 6 points, so 4.5 million striker, getting me 6 points was brilliant. Very happy with him. He's Newcastle away, so Newcastle have been fairly okay defensive. Not sure if Deeney and the likes of Deeney and Gray will come back in and take Success's play. I think he could potentially start, but he might get subbed after 60, 70 minutes. Did think it was a toss-up between him and Murphy to start in my team and Alexander-Arnold, but as I mentioned earlier, I think TAA will be on the bench. And out of the two, I think I'd always go with the man who's got the home game. So that would be Murphy, Cardiff at home to Leicester. But if anyone is rested, pretty happy to have Success as first sub there. And potentially could come off my bench again for attacking returns. So that's how my squad's shaping up going into game week 11. Talked about fixtures, captain's pick. Any more standout fixtures that I'd mention? Fancy Bournemouth to do well against United. I think they'll score. Could potentially be a 2-2 draw in that match. Everton at home to Brighton. Hoping Richarlison doesn't do too well in that match, because that was one of the reasons why I wasn't too sure of bringing him out of my team. But I have got Hazard, so as long as Hazard outscores Richarlison, I'm pretty happy there. West Ham home to Burnley. I think if Arnautovic plays, he potentially do well in that match, so that'll be good for me to see, because I am looking at bringing him in the game week after. And then I think I've pretty much covered all the other fixtures. Obviously that Monday night game, Fulham away at Huddersfield, looking at Mitrovic to do well. Okay, so I think I'll wrap up the show there. A reminder again that the Game Week 11 deadline is Saturday morning at 11:30am. That's tomorrow at 11:30am. You can find me tweeting FPL Gold on the podcast Twitter account at Captain's Pick Pod. Feel free to send in any questions or topics you'd like discussed on the show. And so from me, good luck with your Game Week 11, and until next time, it's been my pleasure to talk with you.
Captain's Pick, the FPL Podcast.